Hello, video gamers. I'm Shu Tanaka. With me today is my brother Chan Tanaka.
Hello.
And also apparently our assistant Arnie, because with the way everything else is going, why not bring in a macrocephalic blue chipmunk for color commentary? Why not? The world is chaos.
Are there any of those cheese crackers left?
Today, video gamers, is our E3 in review episode, where we'll be looking back on all the big reveals, surprises, confusion, and general permeating disappointment of the 2021 Electronic Entertainment Expo.
We have seen everything. We've watched the Xbox Bethesda show, we experienced Nintendo, we've witnessed Ubisoft, Capcom, and Square Enix, we squinted through our fingers at Intellivision.
We did not watch the Verizon presentation.
No, and shame on them for the sheer audacity of showing up in the first place. We don't try to sell our line of handcrafted artisanal bath soaps at their trade shows. They have no business peddling wireless snake oil at ours. Begone Verizon and don't come back until you've made a game about an unshaven guy shooting things.
I made a pan of cocktail wieners. And I ate them. Highlight of the show.
Thank you, Arnie, for that brief detour from all relevancy. Now keep quiet.
I keep quieter with cheese crackers. Just saying.
Before we get started reviewing the presentations, brother, I believe it's important that we address the fact that this year's show was not a normal E3.
No, you're quite right, Chan. E3 2021 was an atypical presentation for an atypical year, following on the heels of E3 2020, which was itself so atypical that it didn't even technically exist, and that's a hard act to pull off. Ongoing health concerns meant that E3's usual in-person press events and convention floor shenanigans were replaced by an entirely digital showcase which, while still fulfilling its basic purpose of highlighting upcoming titles, could probably have been livened up with a laugh track or simulated applause.
I have a keychain that makes fart noises.
Arnie, I was with you in the living room after you finished with the cocktail wieners, and I am willing to testify in court that there was no keychain involved.
The show, brother. We're here to discuss the show. Or anything less repulsive, really.
Right, yes, good call, Chen. E3 2021 has come and gone, video gamers, and the consensus has largely been that they did a pretty good job, given this year's obvious constraints.
The all-digital presentations, you mean?
Well, that, but even more the reduced studio output stemming from an entire production year spent in isolated lockdown. Like if a coma patient wiggled his pinky finger, that would also be a pretty good effort given the specific circumstances.
First up was Ubisoft.
Right. Kicking off the whole affair on Saturday, Ubisoft, hands down the Frenchiest of the major publishers, showed off the game that had previously been known as Rainbow Six Quarantine, but is now Rainbow Six Extraction due to the now obviously negative real-world connotations of the Quarantine subtitle, and also presumably because it tested better than Rainbow Six Working from Home in Unwashed Pajama Pants, and Rainbow Six Crushing Ennui.
Extraction is a co-op shooter set in the ever-increasingly not-at-all Tom Clancy-ish Tom Clancy-verse, and features a spreading viral alien threat.
Which you'd think would make the game more interesting, but somehow it still manages to blend in with any number of other vaguely militarized co-op shooters. Kind of an accomplishment, really.
Now, brother, you don't like multiplayer shooters anyway. You're probably not the ideal critic for this sort of game.
Perhaps you're right, Chen, but I don't see a foul-mouthed, misogynistic 13-year-old in the room right now, so we'll have to make do. Besides, we've got like a dozen shows to get through at this point. We can either do thoughtful commentary on each one, or make it to Captain Mooku's barbecue hut in time for the Throne of Brisket, not both.
As you were.
Right, so just skimming the highlights here, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is getting an educational mode similar to the ones they did for Odyssey and Origins, teaching young learners important historical facts like the sound an axe makes when you pull it out of an enemy's skull.
I don't think the mode actually features that.
That sound is schlurk, if anyone's curious.
We also learned a bit more about the upcoming Far Cry 6, did we not?
We did, although in an unusual move, most of the really juicy details had already been provided by Ubisoft in a series of trailers a week or so prior to E3, leaving the E3 presentation itself with little to debut but a single video cutscene shown without context and made all the more tepid by the fact that mere days before they showed extensive in-game footage of an adorable wiener dog named Chorizo.
A general rule of game promotion is that you do not show the public a tiny in-game dog unless you are prepared for all public media interactions from that point forward to center upon that tiny dog.
The gaming public public loves animal sidekicks.
We're marketing gold.
Nobody said you could talk.
Moving on to Sunday, we had the first of the two major console showcases with the Xbox Bethesda presentation.
The show began with none other than Todd Howard himself, introducing the very first teaser trailer for Bethesda's long-awaited open-world RPG Starfield, if you ignore the other first teaser trailer for Starfield they showed 3 years ago.
We did get some important new information about Starfield, however, including a look at the first in-game footage using Bethesda's new Creation 2 engine, and at long last we were finally given a solid release date.
Unfortunately, that solid release date is November 11th, 2022, which is still more than a year away at the time of this broadcast, leaving Bethesda fans with little choice but to sink ever deeper into madness by conducting pixel-level deep dives on every single frame of the 2-minute trailer with a zeal and loosening grip on reality that puts traditional yarn and bulletin board political conspiracy theorists to shame.
If tradition holds, we'll likely see a proper, extensive gameplay reveal by Todd Howard a few months before launch, provided upon leaving his bunker that day that he does not see his own shadow.
Up next, we had a longer look at Halo Infinite, which we are assured by fans looks much better than the gameplay that was shown of it last summer. But frankly, it's Halo. It's like looking at a group of penguins and trying to pick out the most handsome one.
A short story trailer was also shown featuring Master Chief talking to his new, less nude personal digital assistant, with the gist of the conversation mostly being that Master Chief isn't actually sure what's going on, setting up common ground for new gamers just jumping into the sprawling Halo saga.
It's bonding through shared confusion.
Speaking of confusing plots, we also saw quite a bit of Stalker 2, ongoing proof along with the Metro series that the people of Russia just do not get to have nice days.
This was followed by Back 4 Blood, a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead.
What are you doing?
I'm recapping a game.
Did we say you could recap a game?
Well, no, but there's a lot of games.
Yes, there are a lot of games, Arnie, and we have a limited running time, which means that we have to be extremely selective about which games we mention at all. You can't just take some random title and run with it. There's a list and a process.
Is there?
There is not.
Just because it isn't in a rulebook doesn't mean the process doesn't exist, Chan. We've done this a few times before. We don't have to write down every little thing. Remember what I told you about putting this presentation together just this very morning?
You said it's like pulling out a healthy tooth, but we need the clicks.
Well, no, after that. We were talking about game selection.
Where you said we had to mention Super Smash Bros. No matter what, because you didn't want to deal with 1,000 angry comments from an army of whiny, entitled tweens?
See? A process.
Well, okay, fine. What's the next game on the official list? I'll recap it.
Arnie, it's not just about the recap. It's about the presentation, stage presence, charisma. So, you sound like if one of the Bowery boys had been locked in an airtight chamber huffing helium. That's not an ideal medium for information transmission.
Just let me do one. Come on.
And if we do, you'll shut up after.
For as long as it takes for me to forget I promised. That's a good minute or so at least.
Honestly, that's probably the best deal we'll get.
All right, fine. What game do you want to recap from the Xbox show?
Can I do Sea of Thieves?
That was just a DLC announcement, Arnie.
But it features a crossover with the greatest fictional pirate in all human history, if you were born between 1998 and 2006, Captain Jack Sparrow.
Well, okay, knock yourself out.
Ahem. Microsoft announced that Sea of Thieves will be getting an all-new campaign, A Pirate's Life, featuring the characters Jack Sparrow and Davy Jones from Disney's popular Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Well recapped.
Was it everything you'd hoped?
Actually, now I feel hollow inside.
The very essence of post-E3. Okay, we'll wrap up Xbox with Forza Horizon 5, which is like Forza Horizon 4, but more likely to cause diarrhea, and Arcane Studios' Redfall, which is a kind of Mod Squad versus Vampires co-op kind of thing. How many shows do we have left?
Well, there's Square Enix, Warner Brothers, the PC Gaming Show, the Future Games Show, Intellivision, Take-Two, Capcom, Razer...
Okay, stop. Cure ripes. If there were really this many announcements, you'd think they'd be more memorable. Okay, we seriously need to streamline or we're never getting out of here.
Fortunately, most of the shows really didn't pack their rosters. Square Enix, for instance, was largely concerned about the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy game, in which Marvel's plucky gang of misfits really kicked the visual misfittery up a notch.
Yes, in that magical spot where not infringing on expensive actors' likenesses and sheer uncanny valley modeling meet, There you will find Star-Lord looking like he just got rejected from a Saturday Night Live parody for being too fake. The rest of the Guardians appearances are serviceable enough, but there's just something about Star-Lord's near-replica movie attire, coupled with the face and hair of an absolute YouTube influencer, that deeply unsettles.
Also at the Square Enix show was Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise, about a man and his mortal vendetta against chaos, apparently.
I'm here to kill chaos.
The little VMU pets from Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast.
No, brother, as near as I can tell, the main character is setting out to kill the literal concept of chaos itself.
I only know one thing. I want to kill chaos.
By purchase of a desktop organizer?
With a sword, apparently.
Huh.
Looks like chaos has been waiting for us.
After that, we had Capcom's standalone presentation, and having watched the whole thing, it really stood out as a shining example of a company not actually needing a standalone presentation. In retrospect, the selection of announcements on display might well have been better served by an informative pamphlet or 130 words on Twitter.
Once the sad, unremarkable embers of Capcom's show had fizzled to utter nothingness, we came to the final big press event of the week, Nintendo.
Did we? You just named like 5 other presentations.
A throne of brisket, brother.
All of which have been better summarized elsewhere, so onward to Nintendo. As has become E3 tradition, video gamers, Nintendo once again put a cap on the news events by pushing a pre-recorded Nintendo Direct through the still smoldering debris of the other companies' presentations, allowing one last ray of hope to flare in the hearts of those poor souls still watching. Did they deliver?
As with most Nintendo presentations, the answer to this question largely depended on which franchise the viewer is most invested in. Fans of Animal Crossing, for instance, were completely skunked.
They announced a new skunk in Animal Crossing? I missed it.
It's an expression, Arnie. Skunked means they didn't get anything.
Oh, so it's racist.
Life was simpler without talking cartoon animals about.
So sorry to inconvenience, you colonizer, you.
Objectively, however, most of Nintendo's showings were fairly solid, if not world-shattering. New Super Monkey Ball and WarioWare games, Mario Party and Advance Wars, along with the largest announcement in the body of the presentation, the long-speculated-on Metroid Dread.
That's quite a list, Chan. And do you have any commentary on this lineup?
No, they were pretty much exactly what you'd expect them to be. Nintendo changes core game features at about the same pace as evolution breeds out flippers. We can do a second look in about 100,000 years.
But we're not finished yet. In the grand tradition of Columbo, the Avengers end credits, and on rare occasions the stray chicken nugget at the bottom of the Wendy's bag, there was one more thing.
Ooh, you can feel the capital letters.
Yes, Nintendo brought out the big guns and showed off footage of the hotly anticipated and as yet unsubtitled Breath of the Wild 2, which, let's be honest, looked a lot like Breath of the Wild 1, but no force on this earth was going to stop our nation's YouTube reactors from doing their sworn duty and shrieking at the announcement like we'd spontaneously cured death.
Or killed chaos.
And that was E3 2021 Video Gamers, a mix of announcements, some big, some small, spread out way too thin on the unbuttered toast of the gaming populace, and delivered in sterile, solitary packages like automated life support in a nuclear vault. With no convention floor to linger on, the participants have largely packed up and gone back to business as usual, although small amounts of supplementary information and promo materials are expected to continue trickling out intermittently for the next few weeks.
And what was the big takeaway from this year's E3, brother?
Chaos.
The exact opposite, actually. Rarely have we seen presentations this structured, orderly, and utterly devoid of surprise. I mean, there's no mystery why. It's been a weird year. There was a lot less material in a fit state to show, and no live crowds to show it to. That's just not a recipe for spontaneity. And look at the release dates. Target 2022 across the board.
It's not like there's nothing coming out this year.
No, you're quite right. Far Cry 6, other games presumably, but there's very little we didn't already know going in. In many respects, the gaming industry's 2021 is a year spent in a holding pattern. Games just aren't finished yet, and even if they are, consoles still aren't available to play them on.
On the bright side, this might be a good opportunity to catch up on unfinished games in your library.
Very true. It might also be a good time to start a proper exercise regimen, get on better terms with your relatives, and learn a second language. But we both know none of that's going to happen, don't we? No, there's no way out of this one. We've got our taste for normalcy back, but it's not coming soon. The gaming public has doomed itself to 12 months of foot tapping and anxious glances at the clock, and that's the end of it.
That's the end of it?
Well, that's all the time I'm spending on it. Let's vamoose.
Hang on now, I still have some thoughts on this year's show. I want to just take a few minutes and, really explore what all the delays in digital presentations mean for the gaming industry long term.
Do you want that more than a heap of savory hickory smoked brisket?
No.
Then that's a wrap, video gamers, but remember, so long as there's misplaced anticipation, soul-deflating disappointment, or awkward public speaking engagements where you don't know what to do with your hands, E3 will live on in you.
Kill chaos, everyone.
Like the video gamers? We have more such wonders to show you, and all you have to do is subscribe and hit the notifications button.
I mean, you don't have to.
Also consider becoming a patron by following the link to our Patreon page, where we turn your cash into videos, comics, and games using the darkest of dark magics.
But mostly just cash.